consecrating your emotions, consecrating your focuses, if your fasting is going to be effective. Otherwise, you're just dieting and abstaining from food, and it's not going to spiritually benefit you. And so I want to encourage you that, again, as we are in this year, of course, we have declared this to be a time or a year of extreme consecration. I want to be encouraging you to be adding prayer time, increased time in prayer, increased time in the Word to your time of fasting. We're going to continue tonight in our series on deliberate success and deliberate kingdom success. We've gone through several laws of kingdom success, and we've been hearing and receiving many testimonies surrounding the application of some of this that we've been teaching. And so the word works, principles work, no matter who's working them or who applies them, if you properly apply them. If you don't properly apply them, then they will not work for you. Hearing the word alone does not produce a changed life. It's only when you move from being a hearer into being a doer, and not being a sometimey doer. Because that's how many of us are. We catch something because it's new, boom, we're all excited. And, it's new, we've never been there before. And so we're all excited and we're running on it. But then 3 weeks later, a month later, 2 months later, it's back to that same old laissez-faire. It's the spirit of addiction. Many of us are addicted to newness. And so if something isn't new, you are unable to maintain a steadfast commitment to it. And so you need to seek deliverance from the spirit of addiction. The spirit of addiction is not just on drugs and narcotics, but for many, new revelation has become a narcotic and a drug that we have become addicted to. So we are continuing tonight, I believe on last week, we dealt with the law of self-control and the law of love and the law of agreement. I believe we also dealt with the law of deliberate avoidance and the law of positive attitude, right? And so tonight we're going to begin, we're looking at the law of usefulness. The law of usefulness. And we want to look at Proverbs chapter 27 and verse number 18.
Whoso keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof. So he that waiteth on his master shall be honored.
Whoever keeps the fig tree, whoever tends to what has the ability to produce, he shall eat the fruit thereof. He that waits on his master shall be honored. It's a sin to have the ability, the opportunity, and the responsibility to do something, but choose not to do it. Whether it's a deliberate choice, whether it's a situational choice, whether it's a choice that is based out of circumstance or circumstantial, it is a sin nonetheless to have the ability, the capacity, and the opportunity to do something but choose not to do it. Of course, we've taught at length, on expanding our understanding of sin, expanding our perception of sin, expanding or growing beyond, solely looking at sin as lascivious living. Sin is not, and if you're writing, write this down, sin is not just about doing wrong. Sin is equally about not doing what is right. So it's again not based solely on doing what is wrong, but it's equally a sin to not do what is right. Look at James chapter 4 and verse number 17. James chapter 4 and verse number 17.
Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin.
So if you know, again, to do good, you know to do a particular thing. And again, we're moving beyond low level, base level lasciviousness. You know to do a thing, whether it's, timeliness, whether it's being decent, whether it's being in order, whether it's, protocol, whatever it is. You know to do it, but you choose not to do it. For you, it is a sin. No matter what justification you may try to apply as to your reason for not doing it. If you know to do right and you choose not to do it, it's a sin. I want you to assess your life and assess how deliberate have you been about doing what is right. Have you been as deliberate about doing what is right as you've been about not doing what is wrong? Because as believers, we put a lot of focus there, not doing what is wrong, and do not put as much focus on doing what is right. And so we, and we'll find some sense of protection under that. Well, I didn't deliberately do what was wrong, and not see the sin in not deliberately doing what is right. Whether it's the completion and the accomplishing of goals, whether it's personal goals, whether it's a prophetic mandate, and we got to be very careful that we don't diminish prophetic mandates to solely be based on the moment that it's given. And we're all excited because we're in the prophetic moment when the word of the Lord says, this is the word for this time, and this is what we ought to do, and this is what you are to do, whether it's individually or corporately or collectively. And then past that moment, we have dismissed it and we have relegated it to now be subjected back to the situation or the condition of our life. And because our life doesn't make it convenient to accommodate that word, the adjustment that word calls for, then we delay and defer the adjustment because it's not convenient. When the word of the Lord never comes to convenience you. But we'll reason within our head that that's a justifiable reason to not have acclimated because I got this going on, I'm going through this, I'm dealing with this, my schedule is this, money is this, family is this, emotions are this, whatever it is, we'll reason within ourselves to try to justify why it's okay to not deliberately do what is right to do. And as I share often, the enemy, he is deliberate about taking advantage of your justifiable moments. He's deliberate about them. He doesn't care that you've got legitimate cause. All he cares is that if you give opportunity, your legitimate cause will give him opportunity to manipulate and to ensure that you never reach your intended destiny. And then you get to the point, the time where destiny is supposed to be. Because I thought the word said this long. I thought it's been 12 months. It's been 24 months. It's been this long. And you'll look at time and say, well, by this time it should have been done or should have been accomplished. So now I'm discouraged and I'm defeated because the time is here, never pausing to consider that it's not only time that gives birth to the thing. It's not only time, it's the adjustment of your physical body to carry and to push out what time is designed to in a certain moment, in a certain amount of time. 9 months, that baby is supposed to come out. But if in the period of 9 months, you are not deliberate to attend to what has been put on the inside of you, then 9 months won't do what 9 months could have done because you weren't deliberate about doing what was right. And we have many people that are frustrated with God and frustrated with faith and frustrated with destiny and the prophetic. And we get into this lethargy, this lethargic, just going through the motions, physically and sometimes unconsciously discouraged and defeated, thinking that it's the word that is delayed. Well, the word can't be delayed. Write the vision, make it plain. They that read it, run with it. Though the vision tarry, it shall not tarry. So it's never that it is delayed. It is that you are delayed in arriving to it. Write this down. My destiny is already fulfilled. So it is what's waiting on you. You ain't waiting on your destiny. Destiny is an ever-evolving moment. And how you decide to handle every day, every situation, your life on a consistent basis will determine whether or not destiny comes tomorrow, 3 months from now, 6 months, which is why it's possible for two people to be sitting in the same room, under the same teaching, under the same word, under the same anointing, under the same grace, and not get to the same place and not get the same results. Because the results are not guaranteed just because you're in the room. The results are only guaranteed if you work the word. Are you understanding this? And so you've got to ensure that you don't give the enemy tools to use against your faith. To be speaking into your unconscious, your subconscious mind to say to you, this don't work, and what's the point? It don't ever come to that for you. It's always somebody else that's getting the testimony. It's always somebody else. That is the trick of the enemy, and he is partnered with your lack of commitment to doing that which is right. Write this down. The enemy only has authority in an environment of rebellion and error. Where's my tissue? That's the only place he has authority in. I promise you, anything that hadn't come to pass in your life that was supposed to come to pass, it's because you, in some area of your life, gave agreement to whatever was resisting the manifestation of your prophetic destiny. You gave agreement to it. What did the Lord come and say? Spirit of joy is going to overtake you. Joy you hadn't had in X, Y, and Z amount of time, and you shout and praise God. But then you spend the next 3 months rethinking and reliving out your past. And then you spend the next 2 bringing the people who caused the trauma in your past into your present. And then you get to 6 months and say, well, that was a lying prophecy. No, you were a lying participant. Your participation did not agree with that outcome. Are you understanding this? I want you to understand how potent your agreement is. That it is your agreement. I don't care how powerful, a seed is. If the soil or the womb it's deposited in isn't fit to carry it out, that seed will not produce life. And the seed of the word is always, it don't ever shoot blanks. It's always shooting life. Now, the question is, what kind of soil have you cultivated? Not in the moment. Because you can be in the right spirit in the moment, and you're praising, and you're receiving, and you're open, and you're writing in the moment. But 2 weeks from the moment, 2 months from the moment, are you still living in agreement with the word you said amen to? Are you still walking deliberately in agreement, doing what you know to do right, even when it's not convenient? You have a knowledge. All right, stay away from this. Don't deal with that. Get out of that. Shut that person down. Here's some goals you need to set. Do X, Y, and Z. And you still want the outcome. But you don't get rid of none of that. You don't shut none of that down. You don't make no adjustment. And in your mind, you justify, but wait. And here's the deal. You can live your whole life justifying and making reasons and excuses that may sound justifiable to you, but the fact of the matter is you will still not get the intended outcome. Look at Mark chapter number 9 and verse 35. Mark 9 and 35. If any man desires to be first, whoever wants to be the greatest has got to be the least. An unwillingness to serve says that you don't believe that you need anyone. And this cannot be any further from the truth. An unwillingness to serve, to participate in serving, says that you believe it can be done without you, which again communicates to a lack of understanding concerning the essential nature of support in accomplishing any great vision. That any vision that the Lord has given to you, though he may have given it to you and you may be the source of illumination of it, it is never just for you. You cannot complete it by yourself. Anything that you can complete by yourself is Luciferian. And anything that you can build a throne by yourself, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to do this. I got it. I don't need nobody. I'm trying to help. I don't need nobody's help. Well, then what happens is when you relate like that, well, then you also become that. And so when you're needed to serve and you're needed to help, there's an unconscious line of thinking that is unwilling and resistive to opportunities to serve because you don't see how valuable partnership is as it relates to completing and fulfilling vision. And you got to understand that even in business, in your corporate settings, that nobody is going to hire you to do what you want to do. They hire you to do what they need you to do. You wanting or liking to do it is a cherry on top for you. But that's not why they hire you. Nobody is looking for anybody to pay to do what you want to do. They are looking for somebody to pay somebody to do what they need done. Write this down as a master key. Profitability is essential to survival. Profitability is essential to survival. Growth is essential. Maturing is essential. And when you get a revelation of that without growth, survival is threatened, you'll develop a passion to aid in the growth of whatever it is that you are a part of. That does you no good to be on the job that you are on and you had an attitude with the entire environment and with the business itself. The business that pays you, and especially if you are, whether you're commission based or not, all of your salaries come from the people who patronize your business. That was why I always get confused when I walk into a place and people that are working there seem offended that somebody's walking. Don't you realize that your money is in my pocket? The expansion of business, the increasing of business is essential for us. So you can't survive if your business, whatever business it is that you're working in, does not grow. They will cut you. You will be cut, and even if you're the owner, you will have to shut down and go clock into somebody else's job, because if it does not grow, it cannot survive. And you must get a revelation of that so you understand why it's problematic to be on a team or a part of something that you are not deliberately, consciously, and consistently adding to the growth of. You must get a revelation that growth is essential to survival, profitability is essential to survival, so that you never reason within yourself that it's okay for you to be dead weight. So that you never reason within yourself that it's okay for you just to, well, they don't need me. If you are not helping, you are hurting. If you are not pushing, you are weighing down. Are you understanding that? You think as a business owner, I'm certain you don't want anybody working on your clock that's just riding the clock. Are you that kind of worker that just looks for the opportunity to ride the clock? Just let me get this time to run by. You somewhere hiding in the break room for 3 hours. Under a box, taking a nap for 3 hours, riding these folks' clocks. Remember I asked a question several weeks ago. Would you hire yourself? Bring that work ethic into the house of God. That every person in the body of Christ, we've been reading it for several weeks, Paul talks about it, the essential nature of every member of the body. That if you are not adding to the mobility and the functionality of the body, you are weighing the body down. If you are not deliberate, finding, well, what can I do? And not just what can I do, but what can I do, and let me learn how to do it. Because one thing to be willing, but a willing person who ain't able is a very dangerous threat to the intended outcome. You imagine somebody, you trying to carry, let's say we in the funeral business, and the man that died didn't have nobody that want to carry his casket. And so you got to hire some pallbearers. And you willing to carry the casket, but you're not able. And you go and pick it up anyway. Because you didn't pay attention when they was teaching how to pick up the casket and where to carry the casket at. And so you drop that man's body, then traumatize his whole family. But in your mind, well, at least I was willing. Write this down. Willing does not pay the bills. It's able. You got to be willing and able. Does that make sense to you? Look at Matthew chapter 25 and verse number 21.
Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom.
No.
Sister Alicia?
His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord.
Notice, he did not say to the one servant who took the one thing that he had and went and buried it, well done. He said to the ones that were productive and successful, well done, my good and faithful servant. Write this down as a master key. Faithfulness precedes promotion. Faithfulness precedes, it comes before promotion. But sometimes in business and in ministry, we have it backwards. Promote me first. And then I'll prove the dedication, the commitment, effectiveness, efficiency later. Just promote me. Why? Because, back to our little saying, because God knows my heart and you should know it too. I want everybody to get a mental stamp. What's love got to do with it? Hashtag, what's love got to do with it? This servant who buried the one, wasn't that he didn't love the Lord, wasn't even that he didn't respect him. He says to him, listen, I was afraid. I had reverence, so I didn't want to lose your stuff. It was that he was not faithful to the assignment because of the threats that the condition or the circumstance of his reality brought. He was not faithful to complete it because of what impending threats his condition produced. And some people don't succeed because they fail to be profitable. And they fail to be profitable because they're always playing it safe in the comfort zone. Unwilling to come. That's why he didn't go and turn that one and flip it, because he was not comfortable doing that. That was pulling him out of his comfort zone. That was stretching him. That would have challenged him to have to take some risks. And so because of that, he stayed in the comfort zone. And what ended up happening? He did not produce. And when you don't produce, you are costing. And when you cost more than you produce, you get a pink slip called fired. When you cost more than you are producing, when you are costing more than you are pushing out, you are a liability, and that business will cut the cord no matter how much they like you. One of the reasons that some believers make terrible business owners is because we don't know how to put our heart under subjection when it comes to black and white conversations of profitability. And you let folk keep riding your clock. You know they haven't produced nothing, but you're going to keep on paying them just because you love them. And you're going to love them till both of y'all right in the poorhouse. Praise the Lord. You got to understand that when you are poor at managing your responsibility, you are a risk. Are you understanding this? If you don't manage your responsibility at your job, you are a risk to your job. You expose them. You make them liable. When you don't manage your responsibilities in the house of God, you make the church, you make the leadership, you make the image liable. And here's the deal. Here's the reality. No matter how much we love God, no matter how much we love people, no matter how much you may love your spiritual leadership, write this down as a master key, results reveal reality. Results reveal reality. I can tell what is the reality by the results. You know, I call a 40-day fast, and the Lord said, we're fasting for 40 days, nothing but water. And I say, how many people are fasting? Everybody raises their hand. But then some of us are expanding the wrong direction. Well, the reality is the result has revealed what's really going on. How many of you applying the word and studying the word meet, but your life is in the same place? The results reveal the reality. I know I'm doing it. You cannot be cutting back on one thing and adding to another thing and still be getting the same results. Are you understanding this? The result, assess your life and be real with yourself concerning the goals that you have set, concerning what you have said in this year are your goals that you're going to accomplish. Assess what is the truth, because often when we're asked about it, we confuse and fool ourselves into believing we really are progressing toward. Now I'm doing it, and the results are revealing you ain't turned your plate over. I'm using fasting as a parable. You understand? You hadn't turned your time plate over, so you ain't accomplishing stuff because you still ain't managing your time. You know, you hadn't turned your pride plate over, so the conflicts are still there because you ain't managing what's on that plate. And again, it does not matter how much you say, no, I'm listening, no, I am. Because I think we think that if we say we are, that the more we say we are, that's going to make that really be the truth. No, I really am. And I'm really working on it. I'm really working on my time. And you still late everywhere you go. You are not working on nothing. Because the reality reveals, or rather the outcome, the results reveal the reality. The truly committed, dedicated, hardworking person that follows through on their assignments will always be in demand and will always stand before great people. The lazy that always have excuses will live their life on Miracle Row, always needing a miracle. You know, always needing God to to supernaturally come on through. Look at, write this down. The next law is the law of self-awareness. The law of self-awareness. Do you know what you're good at? And do you know what you're not good at? Are you aware of what your handicaps are? Are you aware of what your strengths are? Because when you get aware of what your handicaps are, you are no longer offended when your handicap is challenged, when you are aware that that's a handicap that you have. When you are aware, and let me add a caveat, and committed to handicapping your handicap. You're no longer offended when attention is brought to the reality that you're not managing your handicap. You're only offended when either you don't know or number two, you know, but you hadn't really made the commitment to adjust. So you've resolved in your mind to learn to live and make do with your handicap. And so since you've learned to make do and you made that resolve in your mind, then everybody else in your life should equally come to that same resolution that your handicap is just going to be a part of the way of life. And learning to make do. We've learned to make do with emotional handicaps. We've learned to make do with egotistical, prideful handicaps. We have learned to make do with handicaps and confidence. And we expect everybody else. Do you ever notice? You know, the only persons, you know, that are offended about particular conversations are those who the shoe fits. Hit dog always does what? Barks and hollers. Whenever you get offended by something, it's because, you know, you feel that little tighten on the inside. You sit under the word and you kind of sit up and wonder, is everybody looking at you or not? That's because you're looking at you. You get in conversation, you know, about weight. Only folk that get mad about and offended about conversation about weight is folk who have not, number one, been real with themselves about what their weight is, number one. And number two, had to make no commitment to change it. Glory to God. You know, I was on a flight, and I mean, this guy, he had to have been at least, you know, 450, 500 pounds, every bit of it. So they walked by and asked him, you know, if he needed a seatbelt extender, and he went off. I mean, he cussed the flight attendant out. You know, did you ask them if they needed one? The person on the other side of the aisle couldn't have been but 130 pounds soaking wet. But because they had not come to terms with their reality yet, write this down, I can only conquer what I'm willing to admit. I can only conquer what I'm willing to admit. Number two, I can only conquer what I'm willing to allow those. I can only conquer what I'm willing to allow those who have the ability to judge, to judge me. I can only conquer what I allow those who have the ability to judge me on. Because it does you no good to admit something, but then when people in your space hold you accountable to it, you're more committed to your pride or arrogance or offense than you are to what you admitted. So yeah, I know I admitted it, but leave me alone about it. Yeah, I know I admitted it, but why you got to keep bringing it up? Why? Because out of sight is out of mind. And if you live with something for a certain amount of time, you have gotten to the place where it's blending into the scenery of your reality.
So light has to continue to be shined on it, or you will cease to recognize and identify it because you have lived with it for so long. Why you keep shining light? Or are you serious about getting authority over it? You can't take authority over what you cannot see. Do you know what you're good at? Do you know what you're not good at? Do you know what your handicaps are? Do you know what your strengths are? Do you know what, you have a second sense for? It's intuitive. Do you know what you're on the blonde bus for? Because sometimes what pride will do, pride will cause you to embarrass yourself. Because you'll tell yourself that you can do stuff that you know you got a weakness in. And then you'll get out there and then be embarrassed and then want, nobody look at me being embarrassed right now. You went and jumped in the pool and know you can't swim. And you drowning and you saying, "Why?" Every time you come for air, y'all turn away, don't look. You're drowning. Throwing something in to help you. Don't throw that in, you throw it back out. Don't help me. You let me drown. Then after you drown, then you don't want to be resuscitated either. Because in order to be resuscitated, you got to acknowledge you drowned. So don't tell me I'm drowning. Don't jump in while I'm drowning. And if I die, don't you resuscitate me. You just move on. So you got to be aware. Write this down. The more self-aware I become, the more useful I become. The more self-aware I become, the more useful I become. And then write this. The more useful I become, the more essential I become. So the more self-aware I become, the more useful I become. And the more useful I become, the more essential I become. You got to focus on being the worker, the member, the partner, the spouse, the whomever, that's not just good to have, but is a must-have. Because as long as you are expendable, you have no job security. As long as you're just good to have, but you don't make or break, really anything, you have no job security. You are replaceable. And the only way you go from being expendable to being a fixture is when you become essential. And my essentialness is based on my usefulness. And my usefulness is based on how self-aware I am, which is why one of the areas that the enemy will fight you in the greatest is self-actualization. He will fight you in that area because if you don't get clear about who you are and or are not, you will live your life under accomplishing, under aiming. You will live your life in a bubble of offense because you are unclear about who you are. You will equally want everybody else to be unclear about who you are. And the minute somebody else gets clear about who you are, you will be offended and want to know, how dare you be clear on who I am when I ain't clear? You don't know me because I don't know me. And so he will fight you in the area of self-awareness, knowing what your gifts are, what your strengths are, what you are really good at. Many of you will find it a hard time to actually say, mean, and believe what you are good at. Some even feel uncomfortable being able to identify what you are good at. A religious spirit, in some cases, that taught some of us should do that. Be able to acknowledge and recognize what the Spirit of the Lord is on you for is you being cocky. Not being Christ-like. Jeremiah was clear about it. Jesus was clear about it. Paul wrote and told them and was clear about who he was and And what he did, now there's a difference between bragging about it and being clear about it. There's a difference between bragging about it and being sure of it. Oftentimes, what we identify as arrogance is really simply a revelation of our own lack of confidence. You're uncomfortable to be in certain rooms, not because of how the people are, but because of how you are not. And so you say it's an arrogant room, it's people are arrogant, and oftentimes it's not. They're just clear about who they are. Because when you're clear about who you are, you carry yourself differently. When you're clear about who you are, you speak differently. You have the audacity to say different things, because when you're clear about who you are, you know what your rights are. You know what your authority is. And because I know what my authority is, things that I might have otherwise been uncertain about saying, I will freely say because I'm clear about who I am. And people who are not clear will hear that and feel like it's arrogance, feel like it's pride, feel like it's an over self-worth, and will try to encourage you to continue to be lost and unclear about who you are. And it's the trick of the enemy. Now, the only thing worse than not knowing who you are is thinking you are something and you're not. And then having people around you that are afraid to tell you, come here, let me talk to you. Okay, let me tell you, I know you've been telling yourself your whole life that this is who you were, but you're not. Now, because the only way you can really become it is if you first acknowledge that you're not it. You will not seek to become what you believe you already are. You will not pursue, evolve into a thing if you believe that you are already it. At the same time, you will continue to pursue what you don't believe you already are. Both of them are dangerous and will cause you to be stuck in your life. 15 years trying to become what you already are. And so as a consequence, the level of drive, the level of commitment that comes out of that confidence has not been there. And so things that could have been accomplished don't get accomplished because you're uncertain about who you are. And then on the other side of it, one of the enemy's greatest weapons, especially in the church, is misidentification. Thinking you're something that you're not. Because what happens then is you commit yourself to an assignment that's not yours. And that's not where the real damage is going on. The real damage is going on in what your assignment really is. Because then nobody's doing that. And it comes out of a well-meaning place, a good-meaning place, you know, a godly, perhaps even place, but it's a weapon of the enemy to ensure that the body never comes to a place of wholeness. And because so many of us on our jobs and in church and relationships carry our feelings on our sleeves, people have been afraid to tell you this is not what your strength is. You know, you've been the main greeter in the church for 30 years. And everybody that come in, you got something nasty to say to them. You're mean to them. And you're snatching them by their arm. But because you've been in that post for 30 years, and nobody want to tell you, listen, come in, let me talk to you. You're a little mean, so we need to find you something else to do. Are you understanding this? You know, you've been the church administrator for 15 years, but you ain't got no organization about yourself. You know, but you love the Lord, and you love the man of God. You love the church, but you have no organization. Are you understanding this? It is essential that you identify who and what you are. Look at Proverbs 27, verse 18b. We looked at this a few minutes ago. But I want to look at that B clause of Proverbs 27 and verse 18. It says this: he that waiteth on his master shall be honored. Another translation says this: whoever protects their master shall be honored. A good manager will treat employees nicely, will reward employees that are effective, will keep them motivated, and push productivity. A good worker will protect the vision, will protect the systems, will protect the brand, will protect it knowing what's at stake if it's left unprotected. And so the word says if they protect the tree, they have a right to eat the fruit of the tree. If you're a leader, you're a manager in your job, you're a leader in ministry, you got to be alert to those that deserve honor. That if they are protecting the tree and protecting the profitability of the tree, you have a responsibility to ensure, this is what Proverbs 27:18 is saying, that they get a fig from the tree from time to time. Write this down as a master key. In business and relationships, it should always be a win-win. In business and in relationships, it should always be a win-win. Look at Proverbs chapter 11 and verse number 24. Proverbs 11 and 24. There is that scattereth and yet increaseth, and there is that withholdeth more than is meet, but it tendeth to poverty. When you profit at the extreme loss of somebody else, your profit will only be temporary. If your big come up is at the expense of somebody else, don't plan on being up too long. No one should make too much, this is in business, this is in relationships, at the expense of somebody else. And what may seem like you're losing out if you don't, we were in the car business, when we were going to make a whole lot of profit, we'd call it knocking somebody's head off, And so, if you had a car that only had a few $1,000s in, but the car had great value. So let's say, we bought the car for $5,000, but the car held its value at $20,000. And so we're going to sell it to them for $18,995. And in their mind, they're going to go online and go to Kelley Blue Book, and Kelley Blue Book's going to say $20,000. So in their mind, well, listen, this is $2,000 worth of favor right here. Not realizing, boom, they just got their head knocked off at the profitability of the company. But what happens is after they buy the car and find out what that car was really bought at, well, now what could have been repeat business was only a one-time client. In the mind of the owner of the dealership, it's, well, listen, we got to get this while we can get it. Not realizing that when you excessively profit at the expense of somebody else, you are causing a deficit in your future. That's, again, not just in business, but that's in relationship. When you take what seems like a loss, you got to look at it as making a deposit into your integrity account that you are going to reap a harvest of later. Write this down as a master key. One-sided profit produces offense. One-sided profit produces offense. It's important to establish positive relationships in which everybody wins. And you got to make sure that you're not trying to be the car dealer that's knocking the other person's head off. And that normally can happen in a relationship where the other person never thought they were going to be able to get a car in the first place. And so because, and I ain't even talking to you, Alicia, right there. And so because, and again, I'm talking about relationships now. I'm using cars of parallel. And Alicia said, ow. You know, you never thought you're going to be able to get a certain relationship, certain type of relationship, certain type of love, whether it's romantic, whether it's mental, whether it's son, father, mother, daughter, whatever it is. And so when you get it, you're willing to pay $20,000, though the real cost of maintenance or to purchase it is $5,000. Right? There are three types of relationship. Number one, there's a lose-lose. Lose-lose relationship. Obviously, that's the kind of relationship where both partners are losing together. This is oftentimes the product and the byproduct of a subjective, hyper-emotional estimation of the purpose of the relationship. So as long as we got love. Now, y'all got love and that's it. But you done told yourself, y'all love is all that matters. And so both persons are losing. You know, neither person is provoking the other. Neither person is bringing anything to the table. But both have become enablers, codependent on the other person's lack of drive. And normally when you have that kind of relationship, especially for any length of time, then you begin to protect that dysfunctional dynamic, even though you know it's dysfunctional. You know it's dysfunctional, but because you think now you're protecting the other person's emotions, you're protecting the other person's feelings. Anything that comes to challenge the dysfunction, you take as a threat. We often see those kind as a pastor. I've seen those kind of relationships over the past 12 years of pastoring, where, you know, especially in marriages, where married couples come and sit and talk, and you know there's a grace on our life for relationships and for marriages. And so I can almost immediately identify where there is a dysfunctional climate that they have begun to make their norm. And so then what happens is when because of my integrity to the call of God, I can't see you dysfunctional and be your pastor and not say to you, come here, you're dysfunctional. Because of my personal integrity to the call of God, I'm not going to see you walking around with a leg that's bent and broken, and because everybody's afraid that they're going to offend you to tell you, what's wrong with your leg? And since you done learned how to grimace and clench your teeth so nobody sees the pain, I'm not going to walk by and say, well, you got two nice legs. No, come here. Now, that leg is real nice, but this one right here, we need to get you an appointment set up. We need to get that leg straightened out. Because though that leg is moving you, think about how much quicker you could get where you're going if that leg worked. But so oftentimes, we've learned again to find comfort in the lose-lose, because the lose-lose is in an exaggerated reality, it's feeding us. That's what happened with the 4 lepers in 2 Kings sitting on the outside of the city. That was a dysfunctional relationship that they had with the city. The Bible says they sat on the outside of the gate. The reason they sat there was because that's where people brought the trash out to. Lepers could not come into the city because they were lepers. They would be stoned. People would bring the trash out, and so they had gotten to a place where they reasoned within themselves, at least we have some trash. At least we have some trash. So when finally one hears the word of the prophet saying, listen, about this time tomorrow, they start asking, well, why sit here until we die? You know, we know if we go into the city, we shall surely be put to death. If we go out into the darkness, we don't know what's going to happen. But one thing's for sure, if we stay right here, all we're going to continue to get is the trash we've been getting. And if you don't believe that there is more available to you than trash, you will reconcile within yourself why it's okay to keep on counting on the trash. And then if the trash man comes along to put the trash in the dumpster, you'll think the trash man is against you. You know I'm depending on that trash. I don't care if the trash is causing me cancer because I'm eating it and the maggots and got on the inside of me. Don't worry about none of that. Just the trash, I'm eating it right now. Glory to God. We've gotten into, in the counseling sessions, and I'll say, now, X, Y, and Z, this is dysfunctional, right? And both of them can know it. But they're each trying to protect the other one's feelings. And then number two, trying to protect the image of that relationship. And so it'll be denial, and then it'll be number three. If one of them actually wakes up to realize, wait a minute, we've been eating trash. If one of them actually wakes up, well then, Bishop, you the problem, because why did you make us realize that was some trash we was eating? I told myself that tasted good. I had convinced myself that this trash tasted good, that the sour taste was actually an acquired French flavor. Glory to God. So how dare you? You the problem. You the devil. Glory to God. Lose relationships. Number two, win-lose relationship. Win-lose relationships. So this is the kind of relationship, again, where one person is winning at the expense of the other person. Whether this is in business, whether this is in ministry, whether this is in relationship, it is, again, a dynamic where one person is doing all the profiting and the other person is doing all the losing, is doing all the spending. This is a relationship that is bound to break, because if a relationship is going to be whole, it needs two whole parts. And the only kind of relationship that is a win-lose relationship is a parasitic relationship. And what parasites do, like a leech, is the parasite lives off of the blood or the life of the host. The host is only dying because of the presence of the parasite. But the parasite is living because of the presence of the host. This is often a ministry dynamic, a church dynamic. Yeah. Glory to God. I put a video, how many saw the video I put online the other day where the sheep rammed the shepherd, and then the shepherd fell down, and the sheep, he actually backed up to get him some runway. Glory to God. And came and bam, hit that shepherd in the head. And I put on there, I said, we always talk about church hurt. Have you ever paused to think about the shepherd you hurt or the church that you hurt? And so oftentimes what happens in counseling relationships, pastoral relationships, even some marital relationships, is if there's not a commitment to what we talked about earlier, being productive, being essential, if there's not a commitment to that, it's a one-sided thing where life is being received, but life is not being restored. And then if there's an expectation of life, then you ain't really in it for the right reasons. Paul dealt with this when he rebuked the church and said, listen, now y'all upset. Don't I have a right to take a wife? You can tell Paul, wasn't against marriage. He told these folk if he wanted another wife, he could have got him one. Don't I have a right? Look what he said. I got a right to eat at your tables. He said, what man goes to battle on his own dime? Are you understanding this? And so you got to ensure that in the relationship, the business relationships in your life, the friendships in your life, some of you have been on the lose side of the win-lose relationship. You do all the adjusting, you do all the loving, you do all the forgiving, you do all the paying every time you'll go out to eat, you do all of X, Y, and Z, and the only thing that's coming back from the other person is an occasional text message. That is a win-lose parasitic relationship. But if, again, you're working out of that dysfunctional mind that told you you were never going to have no friends anyway, you'll just be happy that the trash is at the gate. Then the third kind of relationship is a win-win relationship. And it's only win-win relationships that can be long-lasting. It's only win-win relationships that will pass the test of time, where both parties are giving, both parties are taking, both parties are receiving. Paul dealt with this again in the church dynamic. He said, listen, I give you my spiritual, you give your natural. He said both of us have got to be winning. In your marriages, both people have got to be winning. Both people have got to be receiving. Both people have got to be taking the loss. You know, I said several years ago, the only kind of marital relationships that are truly healthy is when both parties are committed to functioning at 100% responsibility and alleviating the other party to have zero responsibility. This whole mentality of 50-50, this whole mentality of 80-20, 70-30 is dysfunctional. It is conditional. It is not an unconditional love relationship. The only kind of relationship that is godly, that is biblical, that will be able to withstand the test of time is the kind of relationship that says, listen, I'm committed to being 100. You don't have to be responsible at all. If both parties are doing that, guess what's happening? You got two whole people. But it's when one person says, well, no, I'm doing this 70, you're going to at least come with some 30. Because guess what happens? There will come a point in time where you will be the 0. And you are going to need somebody that's committed to being 100. You're going to need somebody that's not a conditional, sometimey person. You're going to need somebody that's strong enough to say, listen, you're out of your mind right now. So I'm going to be the whole mind for the whole relationship. I hear what you're saying, but whatever. Okay, you said you're divorcing? Yeah, whatever. You said X, Y, and Z, whatever. I ain't listening to that. The Lord bless you. I'm going to pray for you until your mind comes back to you. That's the kind of love we expect from Christ. But it's very rarely the kind of love we're committed to giving. We want unconditional, but we are very conditional. Not just in romantic relationships, business, and again, especially in church and ministry. You know, you can offend all the people you want to offend, but don't you mess around and get offended. I'm leaving the church. You done offended 20 people in 3 days. Somebody mess around and offended you once. I'm leaving. I can't take it. This ain't a healthy environment. It's toxic. That's what your commitment has got to be. Unconditional. Now, the only place that's safe in is in a relationship with somebody who is equally committed to being unconditional. Are you understanding this? Yes, sir. Excessive profit is dangerous to any kind of relationship. It was 8:42. I don't know as time went by. Write this down. Teamwork is essential to profitability. Teamwork. I talk about this all the time. It's one thing for everybody to be committed to succeeding at their part as your primary goal. It's another thing for everybody to be committed to the overall success. I can individually succeed. That does not mean we collectively succeed. But if we collectively succeed, I will individually succeed. I said this on yesterday. If you put second things first, first things will be lost. And it's only when you put first things first. So often I see in relationships, in business, in church, in ministry, well-meaning people that are committed to their individual success and cannot step back to see the bigger picture, to assess, all right, does me succeeding in this way come at the expense of the overall success? You know, you say you set, the team sets a goal, we're going to do this at 7 o'clock. But your personal goal is to pick something up that you can't pick